I'm so excited to be here with y'all today. As Jessica said, I'm Dr. Teresa Vasquez, but you can call me Dr. T. And I'm very humbled and honored to be here in this little Zoom box with you today. Before I get started though, I want to warn you ahead of time that I'm a very real and vulnerable person. I tried at one time trying to be somebody else, but I did not like them. So I had to go on and evict them and return to being myself. With all that said, I'm the director of technology at Go Noodle, and we have a value that kind of aligns with one of my own, which is speak the truth, even if your voice shakes. So with that in mind, I'll start there. I'm unapologetically Black and will be speaking from a perspective that I can readily express because one, it's my truth, and two, that's my business. As Untab on Instagram says, and I'm going to do what I want. So we good? Very good. I'm going to assume we good. I can't see you, so I'm just going to make that assumption. So now that we got that squared and we know that we're going to be honest with each other and ourselves, let me start with a quick story. When I was a kid, my dad took my brother and I to Epcot Center in Florida to keep our minds off the fact that our mother had just died at less than a year earlier. We had lost our only form of transportation due to medical bills, but over the year before the trip, my dad took to riding a bicycle to run errands, and I later learned saved up enough money to buy us a car that we called the Merc. He also set a little bit aside for that trip. He worked on that car every day after working in the shipyard as a welder. Once he got it up and running to celebrate, he decided on the trip. Now, I had never been outside of the swamplands of Morgan City, Louisiana on vacation before, but I was excited about wearing the new, slightly larger so I can grow into it outfit my abuelita had just made just for that trip. Now, while we were there, my dad thought it would be a good idea to take us on this indoor roller coaster ride. The line was like 2 hours long, and I had no idea what we were doing, but I was so enthralled by the wall-to-wall video playing on the ceilings in the tunnel that I didn't care about what was coming. I remember asking, how did that video get there? And how does it work? It was magnificent. One of the most beautiful things I'd ever seen. But as the ride was an adult height ride, my dad had to ride with both my brother and I separately. So he rode with my brother first and then came back and rode with me. The awe I felt while I waited in that line completely disappeared as that roller coaster lurked forward into a dark, huge room. We were flying, my plaits were whipping left and right. I was cut off, I was just yelling my head off, and I didn't know whether or not I was enjoying it or freaking out. Hell, I still don't. When the ride ended, something inside of me wanted to do it again, but since I had literally kept my eyes closed the entire time, I wondered if this was the ride for me. I got off the ride and said, that wasn't so bad. And my dad smirked at me and said, well, let's do it again then. And I remember saying, no, thank you, and took off running out the exit. We still laugh at how gangsta I was trying to be, yet I took off like Usain Bolt when presented with the opportunity to ride again. Another thing that happened was that as we were leaving the park for that day, a store with the most beautiful, just finest glass trinkets I'd ever seen caught my eye. I asked my abuelita if we could go inside so I could buy something with the $9 I had saved up from my allowance over the past year. When I finally saw the one that I wanted and I was about to pick it up, the store lady told me, you can't afford anything in here, sweetheart. I pulled out my strawberry shortcake Velcro wallet and said, but I have $9. And she smiled and said, you don't have enough. That was my first come to Jesus moment with shame. I felt ashamed instantly. I had my money, so why couldn't I buy or at least find something I could afford? And my abuelita was so upset. She said, vámonos, Teresita, and pulled my arm and she dragged me out of the store. Thinking back often to this experience and what was a wonderful trip has helped me not only express my journey in tech, but also realize what's important to me as a person. Now, I've had a great run, and it's not over yet by any means. And I've been surrounded by wonderful mentors, yet in many ways, the story I just shared is what my tech journey has felt like. Getting on a ride that was not created for me, yelling and screaming, sometimes with elation. And while I'm curious, I'm also wondering if I should even be here. Then watching something that I've worked so hard and saved up for, that I'm close enough to touch from the outside and being told that I can't afford it. Now, your tech journey might not have been as crazy a ride as mine, and you might be enjoying it with your eyes wide open. But there will come a time in your life that you will question something that you decided to do. Because to me, tech, life, all the same thing. Because the principles don't change for us based on the situation or circumstance. They're just covered with added complexities and expectations, which can make the right next step hard to envision at times. So let's talk about self-leadership. That term was first coined in organizational management literature by Charles C. Manns. He defined it as a comprehensive self-influence perspective that concerns leading oneself toward performance of naturally motivating tasks, as well as managing oneself to do work that must be done, but it's not naturally motivating. The key terms here are leading and managing. Being able to lead yourself takes a level of knowledge about both your current situation and your innermost desires. Some of us enjoy things, but we don't even really know the catalyst for that enjoyment, which can make us question our purpose when things start to get hard. Managing your ability to do things that you don't like is another piece of this. We often believe that we have to do things that we don't like in order to achieve the successes that we desire. But that becomes harder when we don't do the work to define our success on our own terms. And this leaves us burned out and searching for passion. As a Black woman, staying in tech has been challenging, and not because of the tech. And I do not believe that I should have to deal with some of the bullshit that I've had to deal with. I don't think anyone should. If I didn't have a clear vision though, and purpose for why I stay in tech, I would have left a long time ago. But I understand that all of tech is not bad, and that while I cannot control others, I can control my energy and the energy that I choose to spend on the bullshit, should I choose to stay. But it is my choice, and that is where the power lies. Now, another, another person from organizational leadership named Ferraro took it a step further and defined self-directed leadership, okay? And that is the process by which an individual, inspired by personal convictions and a purpose, develops and then carries out a plan to improve their leadership skills and their personal competencies. When we think about where we want to go in life, we often form a picture from the examples of what we see others who embody the same values and victories that we hope to one day achieve. We find similarities in their journey with our own. And in doing so, we often try to emulate their successes. Thus, those very successes become how we view the world. Being self-guided means you're on a trip. Got a destination, you know where you're going. But you listen to your instincts and your gut enough to know when the path or destination needs to change in order to complete your own definition of success, or when you need to stay the course. Today, I'd like to share with you how I've learned to define my own success and how I've mentored others to define theirs, as well without the constraints of unrealistic expectations or losing the ability to be openly authentic in defining and refining their goals. Before I get to that though, I want to very, very, very clearly state that some of my colleagues and students have told me after getting to know me, because they waited until after they got to know me, that they were first intimidated by me, that my degrees and seeming success and tell it how it is personality kind of scared them. But once they got to know me, they saw that I was not at all intimidating and that I was more motherly than scary. Now, I'm telling you that because I do not want you to take my words as valid for you if they don't fit. I'm an expert in a lot of things, but you're the expert of you. And there's no one that can fill that role better than you. So what I'm sharing today is a series of things that I've learned and shared, but I ain't nobody's mama. So you go on and do you, right? Do what works for you. But hopefully something will cause a spark to help you look deeper inside of yourself if you're not already in tune with what makes you you. So the first question that I have will guide us through the remainder of my points. And that is, what mission are you embracing? We all should have a personal journey and vision that directly drives our mission. We do it every day for the organizations we work with, but what is your mission? If you don't have one, or you have one that feels like it could use a little bit more depth, a little bit more oomph, then let's talk through how we plan on getting there today. So our journey today is going to be comprised of 5 points that we're going to talk about. The first one, defining you. The second one, defining your why. Third, define your own success. Fourth, track that success. And then fifth, work the plan until it doesn't make sense, right? Now, of course, we're not going to have enough time to go deeply into each one of these, but I'm going to briefly touch on those so that hopefully you can walk away with something that can springboard your ability to be your own guide. All right. So the first one is define you. So I have taken this from Stephen Covey, but it's basically proactively beginning with the end in mind. Now, beginning with the end in mind sorts of sound like something we know, right? We do it at work. We set dates, important deadlines, tasks and goals, and then we work backwards from it to plan. But I'm about to share something with you that's probably a little morbid, but I want you to hang on with me, okay? Because it's helped me along my path tremendously. When I started my doctoral journey, the first class that I took was called Transformational Leadership. And it really helped me to transform my mentality and how I saw the world, even years after the fact. The first assignment we had after reading 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey was to write our own eulogy. Yeah, I know, it's morbid. That, I'm gonna tell you, was probably one of the hardest assignments that I've ever had. And I can probably imagine that while you might be totally turned off right now and be thinking, nah, fam, I'm not doing that. I want you to give me a few moments to convince you of why this can be a game changer for you. When I decided to go to Nashville Software School, I had been laid off from a developer position for over 13 years due to downsizing of the department. I felt so lost because I just hadn't done the work. I hadn't done personal check-ins and I had gotten comfortable. That loss made me feel like I had no idea what I was doing with my life. And I was only good enough to sling some code. I mean, not drugs, to sling code, right? So NSS felt like my next best step because I wanted to get better at something that I believed I sucked at. I mean, that's just being 100. About 2 months into the program at NSS, I was learning that, in fact, I did not suck and that I was actually quite a baller. You know, let me go on and shrug my shoulders. But something very life-changing happened during that 2 months. My older brother suddenly died. There's a whole backstory there, but almost instantly, upon my return from watching him take his last breath, I found myself having a panic attacks in the middle of class and on my drives to and from school. They were so bad, in fact, that I had to seek help. So finally, I went to my doctor, and he recommended that I speak with someone. That person helped me to identify that my brother's death had brought me face to face with my biggest fear of wasting the time that I had left in an industry that did not help me to feel safe, and that I wanted to continue. And if I wanted to continue in tech, I had to do it on my own terms. I went back to the eulogy that I had written a few years prior and remembered that, or what the end game was for me. It hadn't changed that much, but with a few modifications, I was able to define what makes me me. Through that, I learned being an engineer was not enough for me. I wanted to change how we approach those entering into tech, especially those like me, because I felt like I was being swallowed whole by the massive misogyny of the industry. And since I had dedicated all of my career to this thing, I couldn't control it. I had to begin with the end in mind. And this eulogy exercise has made all the difference. And it's opened my mind and heart to the possibility that the big bully could be swayed. Because I was able to define my own influence, the world has opened up to me. I've decided to stay in tech and nothing's stopping me now. Has tech really changed? A little, but me changing was all I needed to define my success. No one is in control of that. No money, no title, no other person can define that for you. Nothing can define that for you. But don't wait until something bad happens to define your mission and vision. Do it now. Now you're probably in the midst of, saying, well, okay, you're telling me to do it now, but how do I start this thing? Like, how do I define that? Well, there's some things I want you to consider. What do you want to influence before you die? What would you do with your life if money was of no concern? I mean, what actually brings you the most joy and you would do it for free? That is usually where our passions lie. What would you do today if you knew death was near? Do you in fact not know it isn't? Do any of us? Then why would you spend precious time doing something that is not going to get you closer to your vision? Now, there are specific times in our lives when we stop to look at these things. When something goes wrong in our lives or something has happened that causes us to evaluate our current situation, While any time really is a good time for evaluation, we have to make sure that we're doing these checks regularly, even during the good times. Okay? All right, so the next thing is defining your why. What is your superpower? Now, defining your why is the key to success because it is your constant, right? It's the thing that's constantly the same. Sometimes you'll question it and you'll want to quit. But if your why is truly representative of you, it will be the guiding light that will impact all the decisions you make, the job you take, the relationships you cultivate, how you treat people, how you treat yourself. This is your superpower. But don't be confused because your why does not have to be filled with grandeur. It is what most matters to you. And you know what the end game is for you if you've done the eulogy project, right? So your why is the light post by which you will measure who you are and if you're meeting your goals. This is not as easy as it seems. I mean, I know I've kind of gone over that in like 30 seconds, but it's not really that easy, y'all. It's pretty hard because it can sometimes be a moving target, right? As we mature and life throws punches, we got to shuck and move. And sometimes we get punched right in the face and we have to deal with that. But it's the code of who you are and it is unique to you. And while you may grow, it is central to the person you are. And some folks call it purpose, others call it your calling. I like to think of it like the Force, you know, Luke Skywalker. Always looking for balance and the only way we can reach self-actualization. However, I can't define my why if my stomach is growling. The same is true with our spirits. If we are not feeding our spirits, then we cannot clearly see our why. In other words, you have to stop and take care of yourself before you can get even close into the balancing the force game. So one of the models that I like to look at is Maslow's hierarchy of needs because it's ring true in my journey. It is a theory of motivation that states that 5 categories of human needs dictate an individual's behavior and mindset. Now, all of this is not true for every situation or for every person. This is just a model that we look at in order to kind of verbalize some of the things that we might get into or some things that might help to propel us to make our decisions so that we can be our own guide. These needs are the physiological needs, safety needs, love and belonging, esteem, and then self-actualization. Now, the first of these needs on Maslow's hierarchy are physiological needs, the most basic to human survival. They include food, water, making sure you're getting enough rest, making sure you have clothes and shelter, your health, and reproduction. Maslow states that these basic physiological needs must be addressed before humans can move on to the next level of fulfillment, which is safety. Safety includes the protection from violence and theft, emotional stability and well-being, health security, and financial security. I also feel like this one is key, and this is one of the reasons why I've stayed in tech. The third is human interaction, this idea of love and belonging, right? The sense of belonging. Among these are like friendships, your family bonds, membership in social groups contribute to meeting this need, from belonging to teams of coworkers to forging identity in a club or group of hobbyists. We're all here today trying to gather all the knowledge that's being dropped. I mean, there's a sense of belonging with all the interaction that's happening, which is a wonderful thing. This is essential to achieving your ability to define success on your own terms. You must partner with others who will form a guiding coalition. All right, so let's talk about this term, guiding coalition. Guiding coalition is really a group of people who come together for a common goal, okay? And usually these are people who are part of your circle of influence, okay? So that means that these are people who you can directly influence, can directly touch, and they can also touch you. A guiding coalition is made up of people who have power, who can make decisions that positively impact your peace. And I notice I said peace, okay? If those around you impact your peace negatively, then you might want to think about an environmental change, because it is just not worth your time to deal with people who do you harm, and it's certainly not worth your energy. So we don't have any energy suckers around us, okay? Also consider who you are influencing, because that can come back to bite you if you're not leading with the same expectations that you have for being led. All of these contribute to that feeling of love and belonging. It also means that you have to love yourself, which was hard for me, like really hard for me. Now, while Maslow specifically notes that self-esteem, which is the next one, can be broken into 2 types, esteem which is based on respect and acknowledgement from others, and esteem which is based on your own self-assessment, the one we need to define our why is all about the self-assessment. Self-confidence and independence stem from this latter type of self-esteem, and we have to do the work needed to get to this place. Now, self-actualization, that one all the way up at the top, it describes the fulfillment of your full potential as a person. These needs occupy the highest spot on the pyramid and include education, skill development, caring for others, and broader goals. Self-actualization doesn't involve perfection, though, or things always going right. You can actually become self-actualized and still face hardships. Now, when thinking about your why, you also have to evaluate what fulfills your physiological needs, what makes you feel safe, what drives your esteem. How do you feel love and belonging? Like, how do you want to be loved, and how can you be part of a group? And why you want to self-actualize. You have to do all of that before you can even bother with defining what your success is, which boils down to you have to know you have to love you. Okay. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about was defining your success. Okay. So it's important that we take the time to define our success and that we don't consider outside interpretations of that success. Nothing happens in a vacuum, though. So your definition will impact others, but the measure of is if you are fulfilled. And I know that sounds kind of selfish, but this is my life and my journey, and life is fragile, so I'm going to define it. When we think about promoting diversity, we also have to consider definitions of success to be as diverse as we are people. You know, I was in a meeting with a mentor recently, and they recommended that I take some time and verbalize some of the things that I do to help the teams that I lead be successful, because she thinks I'm good at it. And she told me that there was something there that needs to be shared. It's not something that I should hide from others, even though that was never really my intention to hide anything. But the truth is that my definition of success is what guides every decision that I make. It's my juice. And while others might try to replicate it, they can't do it like me. The same is true for you and your juice. Once you make the decision to embody who you are and what success means to you, things will change dramatically in your life and career. Decisions will become easier to make, and you will not be burdened by the external factors that will surely suck you dry if you're not in alignment with your success measures. So what are some things that we should consider to figure out what is our juice? Well, you got to know what makes you you. And I think if you go through your eulogy exercise, right, and you define, who you are, then that's a big part of it. What actually brings you peace and joy that also allows you to share a little bit of that flavor with others? This is your it. This is your it factor. How have you found the most success, and what did you do to get that success over and over again? Is it something that you've been able to replicate over and over again? If so, you need to document that, because that's part of your juice. Be willing also to share your juice with other people, because sometimes you can help someone find theirs. And when you help others find and articulate their juice, it actually brings you closer to refining your own juice. So yeah, go get some juice. I personally like grape cranberry. So if anybody wants to, send me some, you can send me a DM after this. All right. So making sure that you define your juice, that you define your success. Okay. So the next thing is tracking your success. Now, this is when we're going to get a little technical. We're going to go through and, talk about some ways that we can actually measure our goals, and not only measure them, but also hold ourselves accountable. Because each person is going to track their progress differently. I actually asked a poll inside the Hoovia app and got all kinds of wonderful responses from y'all. I'm just so excited to see so many of y'all tracking your goals. Now, there were a few of you that said that you didn't have a way of tracking and asked for suggestions. So I'm going to, in a few minutes, share a process that I do that really has helped me focus on my goals. But some of the things that y'all said were you use planners and diaries, productivity apps, workbooks, you do some check-ins, leaderboards, gamification of stuff is always awesome. Use your gut feeling. Yeah, your gut is a good guide sometimes. And then there's many, many more of the things that you put in there. But I will say, you're right. Using Trello, journals, spreadsheets, whatever works, you just have to make it a habit of holding yourself accountable to your success. So there's some things that I actually do daily. I do daily check-ins and check-outs with myself. So if you're part of an engineering team or a team that does Scrum, you are familiar with stand-ups, right? Where we have to check in, we have to tell some things or whatever. Well, I always check-ins with myself in the morning before I leave for work and in the evening before I go to bed. And I ask myself, hey, am I green, yellow, or red? Green meaning A-okay, yellow mean, red mean, sis, you need to go get in the bed. Just go on and get back in the bed. Once I identify what color I am, then I ask myself, why? Why am I that way? Did I sleep on the wrong side of the bed? Is there something environmental that's kind of holding me back that like shouldn't be? Like really evaluate why you're feeling the way you're feeling. And even if you're feeling great, write that down too, because that's good. That's good stuff to know, what you can do to make you happy. It is something, you have to ask yourself, is it something external that I cannot control? Can I do something about it? If I can do something about it, do I want to do something about it? Like whatever the decision is, you got to live with it, but journal it, write it down so that you can have something that you can go back to and reflect on at any time that you feel like you're trying to find your why, you're trying to define success, and you're trying to figure out what your juice is. Another thing that I do is I measure and track success with an abundance mindset using a force field analysis. So force field analysis is actually something that was created by Kurt Lewin. I've modified it a lot because usually this is used for businesses, but I've actually used it for myself, my own personal journey. And basically it starts out with a line like what you see there, okay? It's a dotted line because that's our desired state. That's where we're trying to go, right? So it's the goal. So in this instance, this is one that I actually did with a hackathon that I participated in. So our goal was to get to MVP. Okay, we weren't there yet. We wanted to get there, but we're not there yet. But we've identified what that goal is. The next thing that we need to do is talk about our current state. Like, where are we right now? At that point, we were in the idea state, right? We knew that we had to get from here to there, but we weren't quite certain how we would do it together, right? Or even as an individual, how I would lead the team, because I was leading the team. Like, how would I get us from our current state to our desired state? Being able to identify those two things are important for the next part. So the next thing you have to do is identify your driving forces. And what driving forces are the things that are going to take this line and move it all the way over to that desired state. So these are things that are actually your strengths, your juice, right? The things that you know based on your why that can help you propel yourself from where you currently are to getting to the expected result that you'd like. But we got to be frank, y'all. We got to be honest about it, because making a to-do list ain't all, what is it, chicken and gravy, right? We also have to talk about the things that will possibly not let us get there, okay? And we call these restraining forces. Now, restraining forces are the things that want to take this line and move it the opposite direction. It's not pushing it towards that line that we're trying to get to. It pushes it the opposite direction, okay? So once you've identified and you're honest with yourself, you know what your driving forces are, you know what your restraining forces are, then you have to start asking yourself, are they valid? Like, is this something that is in my head, or is this actually a valid thing? And how do I know? Like, how do I know whether or not they're valid? How significant are they? Like, can any of these driving forces just completely derail like my ability to get this line from here to there? What are their strengths? Okay. Which one can be altered and which can't? Like, which ones can be changed and which can't? Which forces, if altered, would produce rapid change? And which ones would slow down the current situation? Like, which ones would slow me down dramatically? Also, I need to know what skills and other information I need in order to alter these forces, okay? So once we look through those, we go through them and we identify, whether or not they're valid, whether or not what their strengths are, then we give them a strength, okay? So what we do is we use a scale from 1 to 10 to identify 1, meaning the strength is weak, the force is weak, or 10, meaning it's strong, right? And depending on how strong it is will determine whether or not this is something that we think we might be able to do in the time that we have allotted, okay? So as you can see here, there's the fear of failing. That's a 10 on restraining forces. The beauty of that, though, is as you continue to work through your program, as you continue to work through all of the things that you want to do, you can start to make that line a little shorter, right? You can lessen the strength of that force. And so as it starts to lessen, you'll notice that the line starts to move. So we have the power to take these restraining forces and weaken them, right? And we also have the power to take these driving forces and make them stronger until that line starts to move. So this is another way of evaluating how I'm going to achieve my goals and when. And this is a living document. So you can always add forces, remove forces, constantly have it moving around, okay? Now, after you identify what the strengths are, then you total them up. So here we've got 43. Ooh, and it moved another way. See, y'all, I'm getting used to this green screen, y'all. 43 here, and then we've got 40 over there. So we see that our driving forces are stronger than our restraining forces, which means that we might actually be able to achieve this thing, right? Now, if your restraining forces are way more powerful than your driving forces, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. It just means that you got a long road ahead of you and you need to be aware of that, right? Whereas if your driving forces are more powerful, then you know, okay, this is going to be great, unless something else jumps into that restraining force category, which is why it's a living document. Now, here's an example of one that I've actually done in Google Sheets. And so you can do it on pencil and paper. Sometimes I'll do that if I'm like, waiting in a doctor's office or something like that. I'll just throw one together, if I'm feeling some kind of way. But I like to keep track of my force field analyses over time. So these are both the same, but as you can see, it started out here with the 10, and then it's gone down as time has gone over. And so you can actually track and have a record of how you've achieved your goals, and also leave yourself notes about this. Like, what did I do to overcome the fear of failing? What did I do to learn more about time management? Like, what are these things that I did? Because these are things that's going to help you continue to grow and also going to help you add a little bit more to your juice. Okay. So the final thing we need to consider is working the plan until it doesn't make sense. All right. Now, I mentioned before when I spoke about defining your why, that doing so could sometimes be a moving target, right? If we knew exactly what we needed or wanted on the first go round, then that means that we got some kind of superpower into the future, and I need you to call me. I'll give you my number, even though I don't use my phone for that, but I will pick up for that, right? Most of us don't know the future. Most of us don't know what's coming. And the reality is that you may start a plan and abandon it, or decide that it's not quite right. And that is totally okay, because we're humans and we learn new things every day. We get new bits of information every day. But you still have to work the plan, because y'all, talk is cheap. Like, it really is. We can talk about our goals. We can talk, shit about our environment and all the things that we want to change, but yet we're not looking inwardly and talking about how we can change ourselves, which is what being your own guide entails, right? So if the goal changes, or you've done work to know that the goal no longer fits, it's your path and you change it, no matter how deep you think you're in. An example of this was, I went back to college as an adult. And when I graduated from high school, I wanted to be an English teacher. I loved my English teacher, and, she really helped me to think that that's really what I wanted to do. And I got really close. I got all the way through. I had 3 classes left. And when I realized, I don't like this. I don't like this industry. I don't like this environment. I don't like anything about it. So I changed. And the rest, as you can see, is history. It was one of the better changes that I did. And so we have to be brave enough to make a choice that can absolutely undo some of the work that we've put in. It's not a waste of time if it gets you closer to your goal. Time spent on anything that you deem purposeful is not a waste. What is wasteful is if you identify that it's time for a change and you don't make it. Okay. Now, being self-guided means that you can call an audible, because the audience is you. And you can be okay with that decision, because you're the one who matters here. The issue comes in when we create a plan that doesn't actually encompass our why, which is why most diets and those New Year's resolutions that we be trying to make, they don't really get past the first quarter, right? Most of us, because they're emotional decisions that aren't really connected to the why, and they don't hit the core of who we are and what really matters to us. Yet you may also be working a plan and then something starts to feel strange or kind of off about it. And that's a good time to evaluate your why again and determine if you actually like the path you've chosen to achieve that why. If not, create a new plan. You are in full control of your life and how you approach your success. Once you get your definition of success, and you consistently try to live it out and be true to it, you'll find that more questions will come about from people. Why are you doing this? Or why are you not doing that? You can become inundated with all the feedback from outsiders who just don't have a say in your goal to being your own guide. But they'll try to intrude, and that's okay. Sometimes it's with love, but you have to encourage your own self to be your own guide. You have to do the work, and you have to be okay with the decisions that you make. Now, here are some principles that I actually live by that have helped me for those times. One, entering flow sometimes means no, right? We can't say yes to everything. Even though we might want to, it might be completely aligned with your why, but you're only one person. You can't do it all. You have to count the cost of doing something today that may steal your joy tomorrow. Fear of missing out is real. I mean, it is, and sometimes that's why we don't say no. But you have to ask yourself, how will the fear of missing out impact your peace? The next thing is, what people think about you ain't none of your business. A mentor told me that a few years ago, and y'all, that rocked my world. That shook me, right? What people think about you is none of your business. As a matter of fact, the example came up, Trinity and I were talking, and I was like, man, you remember that time we went to a local restaurant? And our family is huge. So when we go, it's like, back in the day, pre-COVID, like our bill is usually large. So we were walking out, we had family and friends with us, and we walked out the door, and the server comes out and she's like, you didn't pay your ticket. You didn't pay your ticket. And I'm looking around like, who didn't pay their ticket? And she points at me and says, you didn't pay your ticket. And the parking lot is full, y'all. Like, it's full, you know what I'm saying? And I'm thinking, okay. So I just turn around and I walk in with her. And I said, yes, I did pay my ticket. Y'all have those little kiosk things on the table that I can stick my card in. And here's the receipt. And I also actually left you a really good tip. Here's another tip. Don't chase after people unless you get all the information, tell them that they didn't pay their bill, especially when they're casually walking to their car. But the people in that parking lot didn't matter to me. I knew I paid my bill. I didn't give a damn about anybody else at that moment, because my happiness, my success, my ability to follow my values is all I really care about. And I know that my values are that I pay my bill. So nothing was broken. She learned a lesson. I learned a lesson. We went about our way. But just remember, what people think about you is none of your business. And also celebrate yourself. Because as another Go Noodle value that I firmly believe in suggests, who you are makes you powerful. Y'all, when I saw that value, I almost fell out of my chair. I was like, go on, get it, Jen, go on, get it. Because it's so important that you celebrate who you are. Because there are going to be people who are going to try to make you feel small. But you're not small. You have the ability to do the things that you've set out to do. So celebrate those. Since the unfortunate event at my time at NSS, I've often looked back at that eulogy that I wrote years before, and it still rings very true to me. When I picked it back up in 2017, when my brother passed, I had new focus, and I made a commitment to myself to do only what I love and to go all in on me. And y'all, that has made all the difference. I went from being a laid off, has-been engineer to a joyful, at peace with my life person, regardless of the turmoil that happens around me. With the one decision to be my own guide and defining and achieving success on my own terms, my life is one that I can feel completely at peace with. Since then, I've committed to working with groups that provide diversity, equity, and inclusion. I've traveled the world and helped guide families like my own through helping their autistic loved ones find independence. I've won many awards and friends. My daughter, Trinity Christiana, has become an engineer in her own right. And together, we work to bring a voice of support and the realities in the field through a podcast and series of videos we create. I am doing work that makes me feel whole and at peace and will leave a mark on the only measure that matters, my own. This is Dr. T signing off, encouraging you to embrace your mission because you are the hero you've been looking for. Go get it done, son. Thank you.